The second truce was extended through the summer of 1948, although due to continuing hostilities on both sides, it seemed a truce in name only. However, the UN did succeed in averting an Israeli attack on the Golan Heights, and the only proper town there, Quneitra, the order for which arrived in the forces' headquarters on the day the truce ended. Even at a distance of almost 60 years, it makes chilling reading. Your orders, wrote Yigael Yadin to the commander in charge, are to destroy the city. The city would remain relatively unscathed until 1967, when it was ethnically cleansed by Israeli troops occupying the Golan Heights. In 1974, Yadin's terse order was implemented literally when the Israeli forces destroyed the town of Quneitra before returning it to the Syrians, a complete ghost town, as part of a disengagement settlement. In 1948, Israel's determination to take the Golan Heights was fed by the gradual withdrawal of the Syrian troops, first to the slopes of the Golan and then further into the Syrian hinterland, but most of the leaders of the Jewish state coveted Palestine, not Syria. In August, there were still three main areas of Palestine that Israel had not yet taken, but that Ben Gurion saw as essential to would-be Israel: Wadi Ara, the western part of the Upper Galilee, and the southern Negev. The first two were heavily populated Palestinian areas, and thus became the inevitable targets of the ethnic cleansing campaign, wholly outside the theater of war with the regular Arab armies that had in any case petered out in August due to the truce. September 1948 looked very much like August 1948. Real fighting with the regular Arab armies had dwindled, leaving Israeli troops trying to complete the job they had started in December 1947. Some of them were sent on impossible missions to go beyond the occupation of the 78% of Palestine that had already proven to be within Israel's grasp. One of these assignments in September was for the troops to try for a third time to occupy Wadi Ara and the northern tip of the West Bank, with special orders to capture Kalkilia and Tul Karem. This was Operation Autumn. The attempt to invade the Wadi Ara area was again repelled. This part would be annexed by Israel when King Abdullah of Jordan decided to cede it in the spring of 1949 as part of the armistice agreement between the two countries. It is one of the ironies of history that many Israelis today, frightened by a potential adverse shift in the demographic balance, favor the transfer of this area back to the Palestinian Authority's West Bank. If he only knew what the here Ilan Pape. If he only knew. uh, they didn't stop there. They didn't stop there. The option between being imprisoned in a locked Bantustan on the West Bank or enjoying second-class citizenship in Israel holds no exciting prospects either way, to say the least. But the people of the Wadi understandably go for the latter, as they rightly suspect that, As in the past, the Israelis want the territory without the people. Israel has already dislocated 200,000 people since it started erecting its segregation wall. Oh, they have a wall in an area very near to the Wadi and also heavily populated by Palestinians. In September 1948, every single one of the 15 villages that make up Wadi Ara showed resilience and bravery in repelling the attackers, aided by Iraqi officers from the nearby contingent that the Arab League had dispatched to protect the northern West Bank when the war started. These Iraqis were among the few of Palestine's neighbors who actually fought and succeeded in rescuing whole Palestinian villages. Captain Abu Rauf Abd al Razik was one such Iraqi officer who helped defend the villages of Taitaba and Kalanshuwa. He had chivalrously decided to stay behind when all the other Iraqi soldiers had received orders to leave a few weeks before Operation Autumn. Major Abd al Karim and Captain Farhan from the Iraqi army led the fortified opposition in Zaita and Zat, and Sergeant Khalid Abu Hamoud supervised the resistance in Atil. Captain Najib and Muhammad Sulaiman did the same in Baka al-Garbiya, Khalil Bek in the village of Ara, and Mamdouh Miara in Arara. The list of Iraqi junior officers mounting the guard and taking the lead is impressively long. September also saw the preparations for Operation Sneer, in another effort to take over the Golan Heights, including once more the town of Quneitra, with 14 September set as D-Day. The first stage was delayed to the 26th and eventually trimmed down to a mini operation codenamed Bereshit, Genesis, involving the attempt to take a Syrian stronghold that, according to the UN map, was inside the Jewish state, Outpost 223. The Syrian Defense Forces repelled one Israeli attack after another. As part of their preparations, the Israelis tried to contact Circassian and Druze soldiers in the Syrian army to persuade them to collaborate. Israel's military action on the Syrian line continued well into the spring of 1949 and included orders not only to occupy outposts but also villages. On 1st April 1949, the orders were then revised, confining the forces to offensives against military outposts only. In September, the ethnic cleansing operation continued in the central Galilee, where Israeli troops wiped out Palestinian pockets ahead of the last big operation that was to come a month later in the upper Galilee and in the south of Palestine. Local volunteers and the ALA put up some tough resistance in several villages, most notably Ilabun. A report by the Israeli forces describes their abortive assault. Tonight, our forces raided Ilabun. After overcoming the enemy's resistance, we found the village deserted. After inflicting damage and slaughtering a herd, our forces withdrew, while constantly exchanging fire with the enemy. In other words, although Ilabun had not yet been taken, it had already been emptied of most of its inhabitants. In the village of Tarsiha, on the other hand, mostly Christian Palestinians defended the village, while the majority of the people were still there. With hindsight, it would seem that it was their decision to stay that saved them from expulsion. Although, had most of them been Muslim, their fate could have been very different. Tarshiha was eventually occupied in October, but was not subsequently evacuated. Had it been taken in September, this outcome too might have been very different, since the orders for Operation Aleph Ain from 19 September 1948 read Tarshiha has to be evicted to the north. But such moments of grace were few and far between, and were certainly not bestowed upon the final group of villages that were depopulated in the western part of the Upper Galilee and in the southern parts of the Hebron area, Beersheba, and along the southern coastline.